Picture this: a British actor who spent years performing in half-empty theaters, who couldn't afford to eat properly between auditions, who was ready to quit acting entirely, suddenly becomes one of the most sought-after stars in Hollywood. This is the story of Joseph Quinn, and his journey to becoming the Human Torch in Marvel's Fantastic Four is even more incredible than Johnny Storm's origin story. Just 4 years ago, Joseph Quinn was completely unknown outside of British theater circles. Today, he's beaten out actors like Dacre Montgomery, Joe Keery, and even Zac Efron for one of the most coveted roles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But here's the twist: Marvel didn't choose him because he looked like a superhero or had action experience. They chose him for a very specific reason that I'll reveal at the end of this video. And when you hear what it is, you'll understand why Joseph Quinn might just deliver the best Human Torch we've ever seen. Today, we're diving deep into how a shy kid from South London who was bullied in school became Hollywood's newest obsession. From his breakout role that had millions of fans camping outside his hotel, to working with Ridley Scott, to joining the MCU, this is the complete story of Joseph Quinn's meteoric rise. And stay tuned until the end, because the way he landed the Fantastic Four role and what it means for Johnny Storm's character will completely change how you see the MCU's future. Joseph Quinn was born on May 15, 1993, in South London. Unlike many actors who come from theatrical families or have industry connections, Joseph's background was refreshingly ordinary. His father worked in business, his mother was a teacher. He grew up in a typical South London neighborhood, attending local state schools, with no particular connection to the entertainment world. As a child, Joseph was painfully shy. He later described himself as the kid who would hide behind his mother's legs when meeting new people. He was small for his age, bookish, more interested in reading fantasy novels than playing football. This made him a target for bullies throughout his school years. He's spoken about how drama class became his refuge, the one place where being different was actually an advantage. His first taste of performing came at age 7, when his primary school put on a production of The Wizard of Oz. Joseph was cast as a munchkin, with exactly one line. But something clicked during that performance. The shy kid who could barely speak to strangers suddenly felt at home on stage. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, noticed his natural ability and encouraged his parents to let him audition for youth theater groups. At age 11, Joseph joined the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts youth program. This wasn't the full drama school, but weekend classes for young people. His parents had to scrape together the fees, and Joseph would take 2 buses across London every Saturday morning to attend. He was often the only kid there on scholarship, surrounded by children from much wealthier families. But he didn't care. He was learning to act. During his teenage years at Emmanuel School in Battersea, Joseph threw himself into every school production. He played Lysander in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Algernon in The Importance of Being Earnest, and even took on female roles when needed. His drama teacher, Mr. Richard Hodges, later said that Joseph had an unusual ability to completely transform himself on stage. The shy, quiet student would disappear, replaced by whatever character he was playing. But despite his obvious talent, Joseph's path to professional acting was far from smooth. When he applied to drama schools at 18, he faced rejection after rejection. RADA turned him down. So did Lambda and Bristol Old Vic. The feedback was always vague, but essentially boiled down to not being ready or not having it, whatever it was. Instead of giving up, Joseph took a gap year and worked at a local cinema in Clapham, saving money while continuing to audition. He lived at home, spent his days selling popcorn and cleaning theaters, and his evenings preparing monologues. His co-workers had no idea that the quiet guy who worked the Tuesday afternoon shift was spending every spare moment preparing for auditions. Finally, on his second round of applications, Joseph was accepted to the London School of Music and Dramatic Art LSMD, not to be confused with Lambda. It wasn't his first choice, but it was a respected drama school with a strong reputation for producing working actors. The 3-year program cost £27,000 in total, and Joseph had to take out substantial student loans, work part-time jobs, and rely on a small hardship grant to afford it. Drama school was transformative, but brutal. Joseph later described it as 3 years of being constantly told you're not good enough, while somehow trying to believe that you are. He studied voice, movement, stage combat, and classical text. He learned to fence, to dance, to sing, though he admits he's still terrible at it, and to cry on cue. But most importantly, he learned to access parts of himself he'd kept hidden since those bullied schoolyard days. His showcases at drama school were successful enough to get him an agent, though not one of the big agencies. Helen Mumby, a small but respected agent who worked out of a tiny office in Soho, saw something in Joseph that others had missed. She would prove instrumental in the early years of his career, submitting him for auditions that other agents might have considered too ambitious for an unknown graduate. Joseph graduated from drama school in 2015, age 22, with £40,000 in debt and no immediate job prospects. The next 2 years were the hardest of his life. He worked catering jobs, did corporate role play, pretending to be difficult employees for management training, and even dressed as a giant mobile phone for a promotional event in Leicester Square. He was earning barely enough to cover his share of a moldy flat in Peckham, let alone start paying off his loans. But he never stopped auditioning. Between 2015 and 2017, Joseph estimated he went to over 300 auditions. He kept a spreadsheet of every single one, tracking his success rate, which hovered around 2%. He auditioned for everything: commercials, student films, unpaid theater, regional productions, bit parts in TV shows. Most of the time, he didn't even get a callback. His first professional role came in 2016, a 2-line part in a BBC medical drama called Casualty. He played a patient who'd been in a car accident. He was on screen for less than 30 seconds, but he treated it like he was playing Hamlet. He researched spinal injuries, created an entire backstory for his character, and stayed in character between takes. The director was bemused, but impressed. This led to slightly bigger roles in British television. He appeared in Dickensian, 2016, the BBC's ambitious Dickens adaptation, playing Arthur Havisham. It was his first recurring role, appearing in 8 episodes. The show had a budget of £10 million, but was cancelled after 1 season. Still, it gave Joseph his first taste of being a working actor, of having a trailer with his name on it, even if that trailer was a tiny box barely big enough to turn around in. In 2017, he landed a role in the National Theatre's production of Mosquitoes by Lucy Kirkwood. This was a major breakthrough. The National Theatre was where all serious British actors aspired to perform. Joseph played Luke, a troubled teenager struggling with his identity. The play dealt with complex themes around science, faith, and family. Critics praised the production, and while Joseph's role was supporting, industry people started to notice him. His theater work continued with Pinter at the Pinter, a season of Harold Pinter plays in the West End. Joseph appeared in multiple productions, sometimes playing different roles on alternating nights. The schedule was grueling, 8 shows a week, with rehearsals for one play during the day while performing another at night. But Joseph thrived on the challenge. Pinter's sparse, loaded dialogue suited his understated style perfectly. While Joseph was building his reputation in theater, he continued auditioning for television and film. His agent, Helen, believed he had a quality that would translate well to screen, an ability to convey complex emotions with minimal dialogue. This led to a series of increasingly significant TV roles. Game of Thrones, 2017, gave Joseph his first taste of a major production. He appeared in Season 7 as Coner, a Winterfell guard. It was a tiny role. He had 3 lines and appeared in 2 episodes. But being on the set of the world's biggest TV show was eye-opening. The production's budget for Season 7 was over $100 million, more than most feature films. Joseph watched the lead actors work, studied how they handled the pressure, how they stayed in character despite the technical demands of such a massive production. Howard's End, 2017, the BBC's adaptation of E.M. Forster's novel, gave Joseph a meteor role. With a budget of £8 million for 4 episodes, it was a prestige production starring Matthew Macfadyen and Hayley Atwell. Joseph played Leonard Bast, the working-class clerk whose life intersects tragically with the wealthy Schlegel and Wilcox families. It was perfect casting. Joseph understood Leonard's combination of aspiration and desperation, having lived it himself during his struggling years. To prepare for Leonard, Joseph researched Edwardian clerk culture, visiting museums to understand how these men lived, what they earned, what they aspired to. He lost weight to achieve the gaunt look of someone living on the edge of poverty. His performance was subtle but powerful, conveying Leonard's pride and shame, his desire for culture and beauty in a life constrained by economic reality. Les Misérables, 2018 to 2019, the BBC's non-musical adaptation of Victor Hugo's novel, saw Joseph cast as Enjolras, the passionate revolutionary leader. This was a significant role in a major production, with a budget of £15 million. Joseph spent months preparing, reading about the 1832 June Rebellion, studying period paintings of student revolutionaries, and working with a voice coach to perfect Enjolras' rhetorical style. The famous barricade scenes were filmed in Belgium and northern France, with massive sets built to recreate 1830s Paris. Joseph did his own stunts, including fight sequences and a death scene that required him to fall from a significant height. He approached the role with intensity, seeing Enjolras not as a distant historical figure, but as a young man driven by genuine belief in justice and equality. Catherine the Great, 2019, starring Helen Mirren, gave Joseph the opportunity to work with one of Britain's greatest actresses. The four-part miniseries had a budget of £20 million, and Joseph played Prince Pavel, Catherine's troubled son. It was a complex role requiring him to portray mental instability without resorting to caricature. He researched historical accounts of Pavel, learning about the real prince's paranoia and eventual assassination. Working with Helen Mirren was a masterclass. Joseph later described how she could transform a scene with the smallest adjustment, how she was always completely present despite the technical demands of filming. He learned from watching her how to maintain performance intensity through multiple takes, how to find something new each time without losing the character's core. Strike, 2020 to 2021, based on J.K. Rowling's crime novels written under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith, cast Joseph as Matthew Cunliffe, the odious fiancé of the female lead. It was an interesting challenge, playing an unlikable character without making him a cartoon villain. Joseph found humanity in Matthew's insecurity, his desperate need to control, his fear of being overshadowed. The show's budget of £12 million allowed for extensive location shooting across London, and Joseph used his knowledge of the city to inform his portrayal of Matthew as a particular type of London professional. But it was Stranger Things, Season 4, that would change everything. When Joseph auditioned for Eddie Munson in early 2020, he had no idea the impact this role would have. The audition process was shrouded in secrecy. He wasn't even told what show he was auditioning for initially, just that it was a Netflix project with the code name Sudden Impact. The initial audition required him to perform 3 scenes, one comedic, Eddie's cafeteria speech about conformity, one dramatic, a scene that would become Eddie talking about his father, and one that required him to play air guitar. Joseph, who had never played guitar in his life, spent a week learning basic chord shapes just so his hands would look convincing during the air guitar moment. The callback process was extensive. Over 3 months, Joseph had 7 auditions, including chemistry reads with the existing cast via Zoom due to COVID restrictions. The Duffer Brothers later said they knew Joseph was their Eddie after his second audition, but Netflix wanted to see more options. They tested bigger names, actors with more social media following, but kept coming back to Joseph's audition tapes. What sealed the deal was Joseph's understanding of Eddie as more than just a metalhead outsider. In his final audition, he improvised a moment where Eddie's bravado drops, and you see the scared kid underneath. The Duffers realized Joseph could handle the character's journey from comic relief to tragic hero. When Joseph got the call that he'd booked the role, he was working a shift at a coffee shop in Dalston, a temporary job he'd taken during the pandemic when acting work dried up. He had to go into the walk-in freezer to scream with joy without alarming customers. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. Stranger Things. Season 4 had a reported budget of over $270 million, making it one of the most expensive television seasons ever produced. Each episode cost approximately $30 million, rivaling major blockbuster films. Joseph joined a cast that had become global superstars, and the pressure was immense. Eddie Munson needed to make an immediate impact in a show with established fan favorites. Joseph's preparation for Eddie was meticulous. He spent 4 months before filming learning to play guitar, working with Ty Trujillo, son of Metallica's Robert Trujillo. He didn't just want to fake it, he wanted to actually be able to play Master of Puppets for real. He practiced 6 hours a day, developing calluses, learning not just the notes, but the attitude, the way a guitarist moves, breathes, exists with their instrument. He also dove deep into 1980s metal culture. He listened to hundreds of hours of music, not just Metallica, but Iron Maiden, Dio, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest. He watched concert footage, studied how metal performers moved, how they commanded a stage. He read old issues of Kerrang! And Metal Hammer magazine, immersing himself in the language and mindset of 80s metalheads. For Eddie's look, Joseph worked closely with the costume and hair departments. The iconic battle vest was his idea. He suggested that Eddie would have customized his own denim vest with patches and pins, each one telling a story. He spent hours with the costume team choosing which bands would be represented, creating a backstory for when and where Eddie acquired each patch. The hair was another crucial element. Joseph grew his hair out for months before filming, enduring an awkward phase where he looked, in his words, like a sad colonial wig maker. The final look required hours in the hair chair each morning, teasing and spraying to achieve Eddie's wild mane. Joseph joked that he used more hairspray in 6 months than most people use in a lifetime. But beyond the physical transformation, Joseph understood that Eddie needed to be more than just a stereotype. He created an extensive backstory. Eddie's mother died when he was young. His father was in and out of prison. He'd been raised by his uncle Wayne, who worked nights at the plant. This wasn't all in the script, but it informed every choice Joseph made. When filming began in early 2021, Joseph faced the challenge of joining an established cast who had been working together since they were children. The core kids, Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, and Sadie Sink, had grown up on the show. Joseph was the outsider, much like Eddie himself. His first scene was the cafeteria speech, where Eddie rants about forced conformity. It was a make-or-break moment. This scene would introduce Eddie to millions of viewers. Joseph performed it 15 times, each take bringing something different. The Duffer Brothers gave him freedom to improvise, and many of Eddie's most memorable lines, "That's what's killing the kids," came from Joseph's improvisation. The famous Chrissy, "This is for you," scene in the Upside Down, was filmed over 3 nights in a freezing warehouse in Atlanta. Joseph performed Master of Puppets live on set, despite the technical challenges of playing guitar while wearing the heavy costume and dealing with practical effects. He insisted on doing as much as possible for real, believing it would ground the fantastical moment in reality. But it was Eddie's death scene that proved Joseph's exceptional ability as an actor. Filmed over 2 days, it required him to portray Eddie's transformation, from fear to heroism to tragedy. Joseph worked with the stunt team to choreograph the bat attack, wanting it to feel brutal and chaotic. For the emotional goodbye with Dustin, Gaten Matarazzo, Joseph and Gaten rehearsed extensively, building the brotherhood between their characters so the loss would feel devastating. When Stranger Things Season 4 premiered on May 27, 2022, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Eddie Munson became a phenomenon. Within days, Master of Puppets re-entered the charts, 36 years after its release. Eddie's Hellfire Club t-shirt became the best-selling piece of Stranger Things merchandise ever. TikTok was flooded with Eddie edits, fan art, and covers of his songs. But the intensity of the fan response caught Joseph completely off guard. Within a week of the show's release, he went from having 30,000 Instagram followers to over 7 million. He couldn't leave his hotel without being mobbed. At a convention appearance in New Jersey, so many fans showed up that the fire marshal had to shut down the event for safety reasons. The parasocial relationship some fans developed with Eddie, and by extension, Joseph, became concerning. People camped outside his London flat. They tracked down his family members on social media. Some fans couldn't separate Joseph from Eddie, expecting him to be the charismatic metalhead in real life. Joseph, who remained shy and introverted despite his success, found the attention overwhelming. He handled it with grace, always kind to fans while maintaining boundaries. He understood that Eddie meant something profound to people who felt like outsiders. At fan conventions, he heard countless stories from young people who said Eddie made them feel seen, who found courage in his journey from outcast to hero. Joseph took this responsibility seriously, knowing that for many fans, meeting him was a significant moment. The industry impact was equally dramatic. Joseph went from auditioning for small British TV roles to fielding offers from major Hollywood studios. His team at CAA, he'd upgraded from his small London agent, was turning down more projects than they accepted. Directors who had never heard of Joseph Quinn before Stranger Things were now writing roles specifically for him. The period immediately following Stranger Things was crucial for Joseph's career. Many actors who break out in a beloved role struggle to escape typecasting. Joseph was determined not to be forever seen as Eddie Munson. His first major film role post-Stranger Things showed his strategic thinking. A Quiet Place, Day 1, 2024, was a brilliant choice. Part of a successful franchise with a budget of $70 million, it allowed Joseph to show his range while working within a commercial framework. Playing Eric, a law student who must survive the initial alien invasion in New York City, required a completely different energy than Eddie. Where Eddie was loud and theatrical, Eric was internal and terrified. Director Michael Sarnowski specifically wanted Joseph after seeing his work in Stranger Things, but not because he wanted Eddie Munson. He was impressed by Joseph's ability to convey emotion without dialogue, crucial for a franchise where silence means survival. Joseph spent time with a movement coach to completely change his physicality from Eddie's expansive gestures to Eric's contained terror. The film was shot in New York City and London, with extensive practical effects to create the alien invasion. Joseph did many of his own stunts, including a sequence where he had to navigate a flooded subway tunnel in complete silence. He worked with a breathing coach to control his panic responses during the underwater scenes, wanting Eric's fear to feel visceral and real. Working opposite Lupita Nyong'o was another level of education for Joseph. Her Oscar-winning talent and meticulous preparation pushed him to elevate his own work. They developed their characters' relationship through improvisation, creating a bond that made their journey together feel authentic despite the fantastical circumstances. The film's success, earning over $260 million worldwide, proved Joseph could carry a major Hollywood production. Critics praised his performance, with many noting how different Eric was from Eddie Munson. It was exactly what Joseph needed to prove his versatility. Horde, 2023, a small British independent film, showed Joseph's continued commitment to challenging material. Made for under £2 million, it was a disturbing psychological drama about trauma and hoarding. Joseph played Michael, a complex character who forms an unsettling relationship with the protagonist. It was the kind of risky, uncomfortable role that many actors in Joseph's position would avoid. Joseph chose it specifically because it was so different from anything else he'd done. The film required him to access dark places, to portray someone simultaneously sympathetic and disturbing. He lost weight for the role, wanting Michael to have a gaunt, hungry quality. The film premiered at Venice Film Festival to strong reviews, with critics praising Joseph's fearless performance. Gladiator II, 2024, represented another major step in Joseph's career. Ridley Scott's sequel to his 2000 epic had a budget of over $250 million, making it one of the most expensive films ever made. Joseph was cast as Emperor Geta, co-ruling Rome with his brother Caracalla, played by Fred Hechinger. It was a supporting but crucial role in a film led by Paul Mescal and featuring Denzel Washington. The preparation was extensive. Joseph studied Roman history, learning about the real Geta and Caracalla, brothers who ruled together and died violently. He worked with dialect coaches to perfect the specific accent Ridley Scott wanted for the Roman aristocracy. He trained in sword fighting and horseback riding, even though his character wouldn't have extensive action scenes. Working with Ridley Scott was a masterclass in epic filmmaking. The sets were massive practical constructions, with the Colosseum rebuilt at nearly full scale. Joseph watched how Scott managed the enormous production, how he maintained artistic vision while coordinating thousands of extras, complex stunts, and cutting-edge visual effects. Joseph and Fred Hechinger developed a complex dynamic for the brother emperors, mixing genuine affection with paranoid rivalry. They improvised extensively, creating a volatile relationship that kept other characters constantly off balance. Joseph played Geta as the more controlled of the brothers, but with an underlying instability that made him unpredictable. Fantastic Four casting rumors began in early 2023, but Joseph couldn't comment due to Marvel's notorious secrecy. The process of landing the role of Johnny Storm was unlike anything he'd experienced. It began with a mysterious meeting at Marvel's offices in Burbank. He wasn't told what role he was being considered for, just that it was for a future Marvel project. The audition process stretched over 6 months and would ultimately prove why Joseph Quinn was perfect for the Human Torch. But we'll get to that incredible story soon. Between these major films, Joseph continued taking smaller, interesting projects. He appeared in the BBC's adaptation of Small Things Like These and had a supporting role in an A24 drama called The Brutalist. He was building a reputation as an actor who chose projects based on creative merit rather than just commercial potential. The journey to Joseph Quinn becoming the Human Torch began long before he even knew he was being considered. Marvel Studios had been planning their Fantastic Four reboot since acquiring the rights back from Fox. Kevin Feige and his team knew they needed to distance their version from the previous film adaptations, while honoring what made these characters iconic. For Johnny Storm, they needed someone who could capture the character's cockiness without making him unlikable, his immaturity while showing his potential for growth, and his deep bond with his sister Sue. The previous film versions had focused mainly on Johnny's hot-headed nature and playboy persona. Marvel wanted to dig deeper. The initial list of actors considered for Johnny Storm read like a who's who of young Hollywood. Dacre Montgomery, fresh off Stranger Things himself, was an early favorite. Joe Keery, another Stranger Things alum, tested multiple times. Zac Efron campaigned publicly for the role. Austin Butler, riding high from Elvis, was in serious talks. Even established stars like Michael B. Jordan, who had played Johnny in the 2015 version, expressed interest in returning. But something interesting was happening behind the scenes. The Russo brothers, who remained influential at Marvel despite moving on to other projects, had seen Joseph's work in Stranger Things. They were particularly impressed not by Eddie's big moments, but by the smaller ones. The vulnerability beneath the bravado, the way Joseph showed Eddie's fear and self-doubt. They suggested Joseph to Kevin Feige. Joseph's first meeting at Marvel was in March 2023. He flew to Los Angeles, telling friends he was auditioning for an unnamed project. The initial meeting was just a conversation. No scripts, no scenes. Sarah Halley Finn, Marvel's legendary casting director, wanted to understand Joseph as a person. They talked for 2 hours about his approach to character, his experience going from unknown to phenomenon with Stranger Things, his thoughts on fame and responsibility. The first actual audition came a month later. Joseph was given 3 scenes, all with fake names and situations to prevent leaks. One was a comedic scene between 2 brothers arguing about responsibility. Another was an action sequence described only as "Character A must convince Character B not to do something dangerous." The third was an emotional scene about letting down someone you love. Joseph prepared with his usual intensity, but he had to work without knowing the actual character. He made choices based on instinct, playing the comedic scene with underlying insecurity, the action scene with genuine fear beneath the bravado, and the emotional scene with devastating simplicity. He later learned these scenes were testing key aspects of Johnny's arc across multiple films. The callback process was extensive. Over 6 months, Joseph had 8 separate auditions. Chemistry reads with potential Sue Storms, including Vanessa Kirby, though neither knew the other was auditioning. Screen tests in early versions of the costume. Physical auditions to assess his capability for stunt work. Marvel was being more thorough than ever, knowing the importance of getting the Fantastic Four right. But the audition that sealed the deal came in August 2023. Marvel had written a scene specifically for the final callbacks. Johnny Storm at his father's funeral, trying to be strong for his sister while dealing with his own grief. It was a scene that wouldn't appear in any film, but tested whether actors could find Johnny's emotional core. Joseph's approach was unexpected. Instead of playing Johnny as stoically holding back tears or explosively emotional, he played him as someone who didn't know how to grieve. He showed Johnny making inappropriate jokes, then immediately regretting them, getting angry at meaningless things because he couldn't process the real loss, trying to comfort Sue, but not knowing how. It was messy and human, and nothing like the typical superhero audition. Kevin Feige later said that audition showed him Joseph understood something crucial about Johnny Storm, that his powers were both a gift and a curse, that being able to burst into flames didn't mean you knew how to handle the fire inside. The vulnerability Joseph brought to Eddie Munson, translated to Johnny Storm, would create a more complex and compelling version of the character. When Joseph got the call in September 2023 that he'd been cast as the Human Torch, he was in the middle of filming a small British independent film in Wales. He had to excuse himself from set, walk into a field, and process the news alone. He called his parents first, then his agent, then sat in that Welsh field for an hour, understanding that his life was about to change again. The announcement in February 2024 sent shockwaves through the fan community. While some had campaigned for bigger names or actors who physically resembled the comic book Johnny more closely, the overwhelming response was positive. Fans who knew Joseph's work understood that Marvel had chosen depth over superficiality. Joseph's approach to preparing for Johnny Storm shows why Marvel made the right choice. He's working with fire performance artists to understand how someone who can control flame would move. He's studying aerospace engineering basics to ground Johnny's love of fast vehicles in real knowledge. He's collaborating with psychologists to understand how having dangerous powers from a young age would affect psychological development. Most importantly, he's working closely with Vanessa Kirby to develop the sibling relationship between Johnny and Sue. They're creating shared memories, inside jokes, the kind of shorthand that real siblings have. They've spent days improvising scenes from Johnny and Sue's childhood, building a relationship that will inform every scene they share on screen. The film's director, Matt Shakman, has given Joseph and the cast freedom to contribute to their characters' development. Joseph has suggested that this version of Johnny should be more than just the hot-headed jokester. He should be someone using humor to mask deep insecurity about living up to his family's legacy. This take on the character promises to bring new depth to the Human Torch. Looking at Joseph Quinn's career trajectory, certain patterns emerge that explain his rapid rise and continued success. His approach to acting combines intellectual rigor with emotional authenticity, meticulous preparation with spontaneous discovery. Joseph's method begins with extensive research, but not just about the character. He immerses himself in the world they inhabit. For Eddie Munson, he didn't just learn about metalheads, he understood the socioeconomic factors that made metal appealing to working-class kids in the 80s. For Emperor Geta, he studied not just Roman history, but the psychological effects of growing up with absolute power. Physical transformation is crucial to his process. It's not about vanity, but about inhabiting a character completely. The weight loss for Leonard Bast and Michael. The muscle gain for Gladiator II. The months growing his hair for Eddie. Each transformation helps him find the character's physicality. He believes the body remembers things the mind forgets. That physical preparation creates muscle memory that informs performance. His approach to dialogue is musical. Coming from theater, he understands rhythm, pause, and emphasis. He marks up scripts like sheet music, noting where to breathe, where to accelerate, where to let silence speak. This is why his performances feel naturalistic, while still having dramatic impact. He's orchestrating language while making it seem spontaneous. Joseph also has an unusual approach to fame and public persona. Unlike many actors who cultivate a specific image, he remains genuinely himself. Introverted, thoughtful, occasionally awkward. He doesn't try to be Eddie Munson at conventions or Johnny Storm at premieres. This authenticity has endeared him to fans who appreciate that he's a serious artist who happens to have become famous. His choice of projects reveals an artist thinking long-term. After Stranger Things, he could have taken every blockbuster offered. Instead, he alternated between commercial projects and challenging independent films. This strategy keeps him artistically fulfilled while building box office credibility. He's following the path of actors like Robert Pattinson or Adam Driver, using franchise success to fund artistic risks. Joseph's collaboration style sets him apart. Directors consistently praise his preparation, but also his flexibility. He arrives knowing his character inside out, but remains open to discovery. On A Quiet Place. Day 1, he and Lupita Nyong'o found moments that weren't scripted, but emerged from their understanding of their characters' relationship. On Gladiator II, his improvisation with Fred Heckinger created some of the film's most memorable scenes. His understanding of modern fandom is sophisticated. Having experienced the intensity of Stranger Things fans, he knows the parasocial relationships audiences form with characters. He respects this while maintaining boundaries. At conventions, he gives fans genuine moments while protecting his private life. He understands that for many, meeting him is significant, and he treats that responsibility seriously. The transition from British television to Hollywood blockbusters could have been jarring, but Joseph navigated it by maintaining his theatrical roots. He still returns to theater when possible, recently doing a limited run of The Crucible in London. He sees theater as his artistic gym, where he can maintain and sharpen his skills without the safety net of multiple takes. His preparation for the Human Torch reveals his evolution as an artist. Where once he might have focused solely on character psychology, he now understands the physical demands of blockbuster filmmaking. He's training not just to look like a superhero, but to perform complex stunts safely. He's studying how fire moves to make his CGI-enhanced performance more believable. He's learning from motion capture artists to understand how to act when much of the environment will be added later. But perhaps most importantly, Joseph understands that joining the MCU means becoming a role model. He's thought carefully about what Johnny Storm can represent to young audiences. His version won't just be the cocky playboy, but someone struggling with expectations, someone whose bravado masks insecurity. It's a take that will resonate with young people dealing with their own pressures and expectations. As Joseph Quinn prepares to enter the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Johnny Storm, the stakes couldn't be higher. The Fantastic Four, set to release in July 2025, isn't just another superhero film. It's the foundation for the next phase of the MCU. With a reported budget exceeding $200 million and the pressure of previous failed adaptations, Marvel needs this to work. Joseph's casting as the Human Torch represents a specific vision for the character. Marvel didn't want another generic hot-headed pretty boy. They wanted an actor who could show Johnny's journey from irresponsible younger brother to genuine hero. Joseph's ability to find vulnerability in seemingly confident characters makes him perfect for this arc. The chemistry between Joseph and his Fantastic Four family is already generating buzz. His dynamic with Vanessa Kirby promises to bring new depth to the Sue-Johnny sibling relationship. Early reports from set suggest their scenes together balance humor and genuine emotion, showing siblings who bicker but would die for each other. With Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards and Eben Moss-Bachrach as Ben Grimm, Joseph is part of an ensemble that promises to redefine Marvel's first family. The cast has been doing intensive preparation together, including improvisation workshops to build their family dynamic. Joseph has spoken about how this collaborative approach differs from anything he's experienced, creating genuine relationships that will translate on screen. The film's director, Matt Shakman, has been working closely with Joseph to develop Johnny's arc across multiple films. This isn't just about one movie. Marvel contracts typically cover 6 to 7 films, meaning Joseph will be playing Johnny Storm for the next decade. They're planning a character journey that will see Johnny mature from reckless youth to seasoned hero, with each film exploring different aspects of his personality. What makes Joseph's approach to Johnny unique is his understanding that the character's powers are both blessing and curse. Being able to turn into living flame sounds cool, but Joseph is exploring what that means psychologically. How do you form relationships when you could literally burn someone you care about? How do you control your emotions when anger could mean destruction? These are the questions Joseph is bringing to the character. The technical demands of playing the Human Torch are unlike anything Joseph has faced. He's working with visual effects teams to understand how his performance will be enhanced with CGI. Unlike practical effects where you can see immediate results, much of his work involves performing against green screens, imagining flames that will be added later. He's studying how fire moves, how it responds to wind and environment, so his physical performance will match the eventual effects. Joseph is also contributing to Johnny's character development in unexpected ways. He's suggested that this version of Johnny should be into extreme sports, not just for thrills, but as a way to feel normal. When you can burst into flames, regular adrenaline rushes don't compare. This adds layers to what could be a one-note character trait, showing someone chasing increasingly dangerous experiences to feel alive. The relationship between Johnny and his powers is being developed as almost addictive. Joseph is playing with the idea that using his flames gives Johnny a high, making it harder for him to control himself. This creates internal conflict. The thing that makes him special is also the thing that could destroy him and everyone he loves. It's a metaphor for fame, talent, and power that resonates with Joseph's own experiences. Beyond Fantastic Four, Joseph's slate is carefully curated. He's attached to Christopher Nolan's next project, though details remain under wraps. He's in talks for a biographical film about a young Winston Churchill, which would require him to age from 20 to 45. There's also a passion project, a small Irish film about fishermen that he's producing as well as starring in. But the MCU will dominate his schedule for years to come. After Fantastic Four, he'll appear in Avengers: Doomsday, 2026, where the Human Torch will play a crucial role in the multiversal conflict. There are rumors of a Fantastic Four sequel already in development and possible appearances in other MCU projects. Joseph is preparing for the long haul, understanding that Johnny Storm will define this era of his career. What's remarkable about Joseph's journey is how organic it feels despite its rapid trajectory. From the shy kid in South London to the face of a major franchise, each step built on the last. The theater training gave him technique. Television taught him camera awareness. Stranger Things proved he could create iconic characters. His film work showed his range. Now, the MCU offers a platform to reach billions while continuing to grow as an artist. Industry insiders predict Joseph Quinn will become one of the defining actors of his generation. His combination of serious training, artistic ambition, and commercial appeal is rare. He can carry a blockbuster while maintaining credibility with critics. He can play heroes and villains with equal conviction. Most importantly, he never forgets that acting is about truth, whether you're performing Shakespeare or flying around as the Human Torch. From a bullied kid in South London to Marvel's newest superhero, Joseph Quinn's story proves that talent, dedication, and authenticity can overcome any obstacle. He wasn't the obvious choice for Hollywood stardom. Too shy, too normal, too British. He was rejected from every drama school he applied to. He spent years barely scraping by, working in coffee shops and cinemas while chasing an unlikely dream. But Joseph had something that can't be taught in drama school or bought with connections: an absolute commitment to truth in performance. Whether playing a doomed metalhead in The Upside Down or a Roman emperor drunk on power, he finds the human being beneath the character. He doesn't judge them or distance himself from them. He inhabits them completely. When Fantastic Four releases in July 2025, audiences will see the culmination of Joseph's journey so far. They'll see an actor who brings the same intensity to a Marvel blockbuster that he brought to tiny theater productions. They'll see a Johnny Storm who is cocky and vulnerable, powerful and frightened, heroic and human. They'll see why Marvel chose the kid who couldn't get into drama school to help launch their next phase. But more than that, they'll see proof that the best actors aren't always the most obvious choices. Sometimes they're the quiet ones who observe from the edges. Sometimes they're the ones who fail repeatedly before succeeding spectacularly. Sometimes they're the ones who remember what it feels like to be an outsider, who can channel that understanding into characters that resonate with millions. Joseph Quinn didn't just become an actor. He became an artist who understands that every character, from the smallest role to the biggest superhero, deserves the same respect and dedication. As he prepares to flame on as the Human Torch, he carries with him the lessons of every role, every rejection, every moment of doubt that led to this extraordinary moment. That's the Joseph Quinn story. From selling popcorn at a South London cinema to joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. From being bullied for being different to becoming a hero for outsiders everywhere. From 30-second appearances in medical dramas to carrying $100 million franchises. It's a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely people create the most extraordinary journeys.